I want to show you how to make a bear mat as quickly as possible, and probably show you some things that you didn't learn because your electrician didn't tell you. So you're going to want a source, and the source could be a battery, or it could be something charging a battery, or it could be the wall directly. I prefer something charging a battery because you can take it out and move it to a campsite. However, it's fine to just use a battery or just use a wall charging a battery. The battery should be set in a box for rain and covered, and it should be sitting on something so that the battery does not sit in water. Then you're going to have these wires come out, whatever wires you have, and for bear fencing, you're going to probably have 3 from a lot of places. Let's see, like the box, right? As long as there's a ground from the box, you should be fine if you're plugging into a house. So let's presume you're plugging into a house. If you're plugging into a battery, you should just really have 2. And then you're going to put your ground in your, where's your ground go? Let's see, it should be in here, and then it should go to a grounding rod. Now, if it's in a home, I don't even recommend using a grounding rod. Instead, add more breaks and signs if you want to be safer. And to be good with code, which is really important, and please do express that to the homeowner. It's not expensive and it means everything, and not being in code is always silly. You're going to want some written notifications for people in the area of where the shutoff location is, the closest shutoff location, and you're going to want a sign visible at least, every 25 feet or so, for example, so that people can understand that they're standing near something dangerous. And you especially want one nearby. And then just put in some simple, like, LED lights. They're really easy to find. Put in some red lights somewhere. Of course, you got to make sure that they are able to take the amperage that they're being sent, the walking. So you're going to need to know this. Positive is going to be red, and that's where the power is coming from. And then there's negative, or neutral, which could be green or black or blue or so many colors. This is usually red, but sometimes people just don't have red. And then also you get wire like this where it's not colored anything but a pretty color. Now, how important is it to understand this in the chain of the bear trap? We'll go over it as we talk at different points. But in terms of the battery itself, it's a really good idea. Just use a screwdriver or a knife to scratch it into the battery so that you don't get confused. And the way that you test for this is you're going to hook up, like positive, for example, what you think is positive, because you're going to hook up whatever first because you won't know. And then hook the other one up. And if they're backwards, you're going to see a bunch of really high sparks. And it doesn't need to be plugged in. Probably should have said that first, but it doesn't need to be plugged in. And again, I'm trying to get quick here, so pardon the slip up. The wires are going to come out of the box, and there should be an overhang to protect the wiring from rain and stuff, corrosion. And then they are going to go onto the bear mat. So I'm going to use this crutch as an example for a bear mat. Oh, my battery fell out of the box. All right. So you have 2 types of wiring, essentially, in many situations. You could have copper and steel, for example. You could have different sizes of wiring. Make sure it's a larger gauge I think as the numbers go down, the gauges get bigger, but I think you want like 12 or 14, and whether it's copper or steel, that should be okay. And if you mix copper and steel, your corrosion is going to happen more quickly, but you know, copper's more conductive too, so you can change, you know, how it feels to the animal when it's hit, I think. I recommend steel the whole way. And then the prices are different, but they're pretty similar. It's easy to break wire. You could just hit it really hard with a hammer, even if it's steel. Some people put a rock on it and hit it with a hammer, or a chisel, or a bear claw, or you know, some people just use snips. But it's pretty big wire, and steel's a little harder to break. A lot of wire cutters only work a couple of times. Back to it, and I don't know everything, but I will say this. There is 3 wire systems and 2 wire systems. And if you have a 3-wire system, you're going to peel it, right? Separate it and peel it, and then cut out the raw wire. You're either going to use wire that's insulated, which means that it's wrapped in plastic, or it could be wrapped in cardboard and just cut the cardboard off. Or it could be raw wire. Now you can make raw wire. You just squeeze it with your wire cutters and peel the wire off, or you could use a straight edge knife and just slice the wire off. You could sweep the wire off. And this larger gauge wire is going to be hard to sever. A lot of people will try to use like nano wires that are wrapped. Don't use that. It's the wrong gauge. It'll melt. It'll slice up. It'll be hard to work with. Go to the store and buy some real wire. You might need a couple 100 feet. So to give you an example, this is our property line. Now, looking back that way, you can see kind of a fence with a little pink note on it. A little pink flag flying over there. Yeah. Also, there's a sideways white line back there that is a bunch of fallen over logs. What else is back there? Maybe a shed. Way back there where that big solid thick tree line is, that's about 260 feet. So you need to know the perimeter of the fence, and you need to have a little bit of extra in case you goof up. So I'll get a spool of 100 feet of wire, for example, or 400 feet of wire, and that's good enough to go around my property line if I get 2 of them. Here's an example of something you may be able to cannibalize. Why don't we go ahead and take a peek? No, I wouldn't want to cannibalize that, because if I started sweeping that with my razor, it would suck. Got 4 wires though, and if you're on a budget, yeah, it could work. Of course, it is copper. Now, how bad is it to use copper? You'd be alright. And will it really heat up because it's nanowire? Not unless you get really thin with it. So make sure that wherever you hook the wire to the leads, you're just going around it once and it's in a real thick spot. Don't go wrapping around components and stuff. As long as you're not wrapping around anything that becomes a battery, though, you should be pretty much okay. How does a bear trap work? Apparently a bear trap is a capacitator. The way it works is the energy comes in and it charges up a plate, and when there's enough energy, you see a bright tick, bright like that kind of sound. If it's blinking fast like that, it's probably dangerous because the voltage is up. But you should hear it like about this often. And that's about how strong it is too. So imagine being hit like this in your bones, because it's probably going to be like 12 or 24 volt going into your arm. Now, probably the most dangerous thing you can do when you accidentally ride this thing is put your hand down on it like this, and there you might be okay because it's going to try to shoot back that way. But if you put your second hand on here, like 1, 2, like this, and you're touching both sides, what'll happen is the voltage will go through your heart. Ow! And it can, especially someone on something like a beta blocker, which is for the rhythm of your heart, or someone with a pacemaker, yes, it could hurt somebody. So probably the most important thing I want anyone to take away from this video is turn it off when people are around and making noise. It's more something when you're on vacation or when all the doors are locked at the evening. You know, a lot of curfew areas might use electric fences, and it's illegal to have booby traps, so you really can get in trouble for it. Setting aside that there are certain special exceptions for bear traps, having booby traps that may injure humans and animals is kind of why we have these really nice codes to protect us. So when the electricity leaves, you have two options. Option A, you have a single paired wire, and if you can see this, that you should be able to, you can see it's just two wires that are just glued together really well, and it's how they're made. They might even be just born together and then slide out of a slicer or something like that takes off, or molded this way or something. But the point is this stays together and it's insulated, so if you're just wanting the mats, this is what you'll use. The other option would be to have two raw wires coming out. Now if you had two raw wires, when a bear comes up and touches them, like with his nose or his paws, the capacitancy is going to go through his arms or hands, and it's going to feel like this. And he won't know what it is, or she won't know what it is. They'll just know, I don't want to be back here again. And that's why, you know, for bear break-ins, if you've given them a shot in the booty with a BB gun, or yelled at them, or broken a stick on the ground, even maybe blown a foghorn, they're less likely to come back, less and less likely, due to just the matching law, which is what animals follow in terms of how their behavior is shaped. Usually. There are animals that are just aggressive seekers of food, like birds. So look into animal behavior and you'll see that bears will be reduced, generally speaking, especially the kinds that we see around here, like brown bears. I think if there were a lot of food out, though, maybe the more aggressive bears, like Kodiaks and polar bears, would just walk right through the fencing even if it hurt them, or run through it, or get aggressive with any nearby animals. So that might be something to take into consideration. I don't really know. I'd like some information on that, though. Now let's get back to what I am confident in. A lot of people ask about shutoff switches. Let's pretend this is a shutoff switch. What a shutoff switch does is simple. It takes the wire and it just opens so that there's not a continuity. Continuity means that it's basically like you have a circle. So you could go 30 miles from the battery, which is one of the standard ranges, or 15 miles. It doesn't really get 15 miles, but it gets pretty darn close if you do it right. You go 15 miles, and at the end you just have a circle, and it goes back. Because if you end on a mat, then it's going to basically be ending on a circle. Look at these guys. If you want to know how to tie an LED in, you're going to do it just the same way. What you do is you look at something that does it, and then you do it the same way it's already been done, right? So as you can see, we got two wires going in, two wires going out, right? So what are you going to do? Now, I know it's a bit more complicated than that, but you could also look at some pictures online. Basically, you just want to have the positive and the negative going to it, and make sure that you look at the walking amperage to some extent. Back to basics, I think if we could imagine voltage as like how fast a monkey claps, right? And the amperage is it's being the potential for the monkey to clap, I guess, would be the best way to put it. Trying to look at some info on my end to make sure I'm also giving you the right info. And so I'm going to give a quick shout out. This guy is a complete guru and he does a great job. His debunking stuff is on time. I highly recommend what he teaches. But the current is basically going to be how much voltage you can use, and the voltage is going to be the work. So things like the wire gauge and the output voltage of the battery are going to be determinants of what you can put into your bear trap. Now let's talk about the actual design of the bear mat. If you're going to design something, do it in small part, and just remember it's a lot like sewing. You're going to be sewing a wire through components, and you should be able to sew through everything and then sew your way back and reach the original place. So you should be able to work with a wire that's just coming off one end. Now let's talk about the actual makeup of the mat. The makeup of the mat, back to it, you're going to have let's pretend this is a single wire. A single wire comes in. This is the positive side now. And you're going to have positive side in here. We'd create a screw and it would power up the plate. And then we'd have positive side out. And we'd have a screw, and that's where the electrons would be leaving. The electricity would be leaving. You could also tie in here, maybe using a alligator clip, for example, or some heat shrink, or one of these things, though it's pretty good, around a bolt. That's what I prefer, or a screw, and screw it into the mat. So any of those three are fine, really. And after we leave, we can see that the circuit goes around and it comes back. We go down the negative side, and as we go down negative side or neutral, we're going to have the neutral coming in and the neutral going out. So we're going to have, it's going to look like the direction of our walk just going this way, but the direction of the electrons is going to go like this. As we walk and plug things in, we'll plug in positive, negative, but this is what it looks like if we include what's inside the loaded component. Now let's say you wanted to continue and you wanted to do a second bear mat up here. To do a second bear mat, you'd basically cut your single line cord. Again, we're pretending this is a single wire, even though it's a paired wire, just for the sake of thinking. And this single wire would go in here to the positive and go out on the positive plate, and then it would come here into the negative plate and out of the negative plate. Now, let's say you wanted to have a configuration like this. Your mat has 4 plates. If you want to have 4 plates, then you could imagine you would cut the wire here, right? And then you'd have your positive come back down, and you'd have positive in, put a little bolt there, positive out, put a little bolt there. And then you'd have this side, and it would be, you'd probably plug it in here and then here, because you'd be, cutting it and bring it down, and negative in, negative out, right? You don't want to get turned around, though. Remember, you're walking in that direction, and remember the electrons are flowing like a circle. Now, what I like to do, other than having a shut-off, is having something, that you can cover the wire with, or something you could cover the plates with, whatever you want to do. And for bears, there are other things you could use, like you could just have a mat that's really uncomfortable to walk on like this, and bears hate mats like that. Anything that's like kind of bumpy and nasty on their feet, they won't go for it. And if you only have smooth mats, then you could just put some stuff under the mat, like some little pine cones or some old screws or some old bolts or something. So let's talk about some mistakes you can make. The way we had it set up with 4 plates, some people will put 5 plates, so it'll be positive plate, positive plate, positive plate, negative plate, negative plate. And that can mess with how the charge is flowing through it. But a common error people make is that they'll somehow, in this system with 5, they'll think there are 4, and they'll come in positive, and then they'll try to go out negative, but they're not on a negative, they're on a positive. And what that does is it completes the circuit early, so it'll fail down line, and it may even fail a little bit up line because, you know, you're dealing with somebody who's connecting things without counting them, and that means, you know, they might make other errors. So another good example is a slack deer line, which is raw wire bumping into another wire. But I think the most common place to see a major problem is either someone trying to use a single wire as 2, or someone who has on the back of the bear mat tried to put 4, and instead of getting 4, the person spliced a negative and a positive plate through the wire. Okay, that's the best I can do, and I hope you can add something, but 21 minutes, everything you need to know about bear plates.